Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is Jacqueline Charles. I'm the host with the mostest of the Women Are Worthy Network. Welcome to this episode where we're going to be talking about turning your fear into power. Now, before we begin, let me get the house, get everything together. Make sure if you like our episode, you subscribe. If you want to join our tribe, please subscribe. Now, hit that button. It's free. Comment, because we're here to basically answer any questions that you have. And again, it's free. If you want to join our tribe, you must subscribe. So, okay, let me tell you about this wonderful guy, Kute, who we're going to be talking about him, right? Because I created this platform to be a positive space because so many negative things is going on. And I pride myself by saying I'm a positive being living in a negative world, right? So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be speaking to Mr. Kute Blackson. Right? So he is the beloved inspirational speaker. And I'm telling you, when he speaks, he's one of those guys when he's talking, you just want to take notes. He actually makes your body relax because he's so soothing. I'm telling you that his spirit is so, when we talk about transformational teacher, this is it. He walks it, talks it, speaks it. He is the man. So without further ado, we have the honor, the pleasure of speaking to Mr. Kute Blackson. Hello, Kute.
Wow, thank you for that amazing welcome. I feel very, very enlivened.
Well, I'm telling you, this is what I've been doing lately. And I don't know if
Mm.
YouTube contacted you, Coot, because what I've been doing is I've been going on your videos and listening. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with binaural beats,
Yes,
right?
yes, yes, yes.
You are my binaural beats with all due
Mm,
respect,
mm,
okay?
mm.
Because I'm listening to your audio, your video, and it's so calming. So, what I'd like to do, let's start first in the beginning.
Mm.
Let's talk about your spiritual journey, this transformational journey. How did you get here? You're from Ghana, if I'm
Yes,
not mistaken,
yes. I was
okay?
born in Ghana, West Africa.
Right?
My father is from Ghana. My mother's from Japan. I grew up in London. Now I live in the US. So I'm from honestly everywhere and nowhere. And I feel like a citizen of the world, very blessed in that sense. My first, like as a young boy, I felt a deep, shall we say, I don't know, I felt people's pain very deeply. And there was always a part of me that wanted to alleviate suffering in some way. I didn't know what that would look like. And so as a young boy, some people would say I had a bit of an unusual childhood. For me, it just felt normal. I just wanted to help people. I didn't know what I would do. I didn't know which profession. But I think one of the reasons people say my childhood was a bit unusual was because my first memories as a kid was I grew up seeing a crippled woman crawling on the floor, and she picks up the sand, that the gravel that this man walks on, wipes it on her face, and stands up. Call it a miracle. And so week after week, I grew up seeing blind people see and deaf people hear, and people stand up out of wheelchairs. And the same man whose sand she picked up would look at a woman in the wheelchair and say, "Why are you in this wheelchair? You're not sick. Stand up." And they would stand up, and or somebody would come in with crutches and they hadn't walked in 5 years, and he would say, "Throw your crutches away," and he would touch them, and they were healed. And so this man was my father. He was considered the miracle man of Africa. He built 300 churches in Ghana, West Africa, had hundreds of thousands of followers. He built a huge church in London, about 4,000 to 5,000 people every Sunday. So he was a unique man in his own way, and I was very blessed to grow up with him. And in that, I grew up in an environment of possibility. It wasn't like he sat me down and taught me stuff, but I just grew up with the sense that anything and everything was possible. And I think that was a huge blessing for me. And so when I was age 8, I started speaking in my father's churches. When I was age 14, I was ordained as a minister, given the mandate to take over my father's spiritual organization. And my entire life, Jacqueline, was basically set out for me. Everyone was excited but me. For some reason, I just felt like my soul was calling me in a different direction. I just felt like I had a different path in this life, and that was it. Nothing wrong with what my dad was doing. I just felt like I was meant to do it a bit differently this time, and so in my life. And so it took me about 4 years to really muster up the courage to have the conversation with my father. I went through tremendous inner turmoil. I think, like many of us, I allowed fear to hijack me. Like many of us, we allow fear to stop us from being who we really are. We allow fear to stop us from speaking our voice. We allow fear to stop us from sharing our gifts with the world. Many of us, we have this fear that if I am who I really am, then you won't love me. So we hide and we play small and we hold back and we don't share our gifts. And so after 4 years of internal questioning and turmoil, I finally got to the point where I really didn't have a choice. I turned 18 and I had to make some decisions. I chose not to go to university. And also, during this entire time, we lived behind my father's church. I would sneak into my father's office and I would steal, in quotation marks, some of the books. He had a whole bunch of spiritual self-help books, from Eastern mystics to Western mystics to Wayne Dyer, Louise Hay, Marianne Williamson, Deepak Chopra. And I would steal some of his books and read them. And so I became really obsessed at a young age with trying to just find out the solution and the answers to life. And this was my quest. This was my obsession. I'd come home from school and I would run to my room, do my homework, and then start reading for 3-4 hours a night, meditating, just trying to have these spiritual experiences. And so this became my love. Personal growth and spirituality for me was just a love, to be honest. And so when I was 18, I felt a calling to come to the US. I felt profoundly called to come to America because I wanted to go into the self-help field. And all of the authors I'd read about, Jack Canfield, Chopra, Marianne Williamson, Tony Robbins, Mark Victor Hansen, all of these people, Louise Hay, they all lived in either LA or San Diego. And so for me, this was the mecca for spirituality and self-help. And I thought, this is the place. And my soul just called me here. And sometimes what your soul guides you to do isn't always convenient. Sometimes what your soul guides you to do doesn't always make sense. I believe that our soul doesn't care about comfort. It cares about our growth and evolution. But I really believe, too, that when you are obedient to your soul, when you follow your soul, when you listen to your soul without compromise, and I've seen it proven in my life, your soul will always guide you in the right direction, at the right place, at the right time, with the right people, even though it may not make sense in the moment. And so I knew what I had to do. And so when I was 18, as I looked into my future, I saw that I could follow the expected path and take over my father's organization. And I projected age 20, age 30, age 40, age 50, age 60. But if I didn't have myself, if I didn't have my truth, if I didn't have my soul, then what kind of success is that? Like, if I don't, you can't be truly fulfilled and happy being someone that you're not. You can't be truly fulfilled and happy living someone else's life. And I saw that if I lie to myself now to get love, validation, and approval, I'm going to have to lie to myself for the rest of my life. And that felt incredibly painful. And so I had a challenging conversation with my father, and it was terrifying. Some people think that when you find your purpose, life is easy. I think sometimes when you find your real purpose, that's when the real challenges begin, because then you have to face the soul tests that are sent to you, that we draw to us in order to me, those soul tests aren't curses, they're blessings. They're sent to us so that we can develop the mental, the emotional, the psychological, the spiritual muscle that we need to develop in order to grow and to evolve. And so I spoke to my father, when I said, I love you, but I'm not taking over. And I was terrified. My father and I, we did not speak for 2 years. It was devastating. I had to make peace with the fact that I may never have a relationship with my father again. And we didn't speak for about 2 years, 2.5 years. And it was challenging, but I knew I was on the right path. And long story short, I won a green card in the DV1 green card lottery. And that, for me, was confirmation that I was on the right track. I felt like I had no hope, no possibilities. And I said a prayer to God. I said, look, I feel this calling in my soul. I don't know how I'm going to get there. I've taken the leap. I've jumped off. It's too late for me to go back now. Like, I need some help. And that's when someone handed me a magazine called Economist and said, read this magazine. No idea why, but I think the universe, every step of our journey gives us clues if we're paying attention. And I felt like something strange about this moment. I just said a prayer and someone is handing me a magazine. and I was flipping through the back of the magazine, no idea why, and American government is giving away 55,000 green cards and the green card lottery. And that's when I knew, like, yeah, I think I'm going to win. And I ended up winning the green card and coming to the US. $800 at 18. Came to the US with a vision, with a dream to impact people, to inspire people. And 2 suitcases, 1 suitcase full of clothes, 1 suitcase full of like self-help books. Showed up in Los Angeles on Venice Beach, just following the dream, following the calling. And it was not an easy path. I went and found many of the mentors and teachers and authors that I had read about, studied with some of them, went to their seminars, harassed some of them, insisted that some of them teach me. And after a few years of learning, I was called to travel. I wanted to know a deeper sense of truth for myself versus just information and reading and other people's truth. And that's what took me to walk the Camino in northern Spain, a 900-kilometer trek that a lot of esteemed people have walked, a spiritual trek. I went to Israel, studied with some rabbis. I went to Thailand, studied with some monks. And I ended up in India. And it was my time in India for about 4 months almost that really, let's say, transformed my life. My time in India turned me inside out and broke me open to a new dimension of reality, a new dimension of understanding who I am and what life is and why I am the way I am and what I'm here to do. And it was out of that sense of, I would say, deep inner freedom that I came back to the US at a young age and decided, it's time to inspire people and share my gift. Had no idea what I was doing other than I just knew I wanted to help people. Sometimes we think we have to have it all figured out, but I just knew I want to help people and I need to figure out a way to help people. And people started coming up to me and they said, you seem so peaceful. You seem so happy. And honestly, Jacqueline, I had nothing. At this stage, I had sold everything, given everything away. And I went to India, said, I'm not coming back until I find certain answers. And so I was kind of broke, kind of homeless, but I felt free. And the freedom was not dependent on anything else. Not bank account, not fame, not fortune, just I felt at peace within myself. And I think that was what people gravitated to. And I started talking to people and kind of coaching people. And one led to the next and led to the next. And then eventually I kind of organically created my own unique way of coaching that I called uncoaching. And that led to profound results for people because it became more about helping people uncondition themselves from their patterns and conditioning from childhood that get in the way of being fully expressed and giving one gifts to the world. And so people started coming from around the world and it just expanded one on one to 1 on 5, 1 on 10, small groups, small retreats, larger groups, larger seminars, 2 best-selling books. And it just honestly just was a natural organic evolution from the raw desire to inspire people. That's a bit of my journey.
Well, this is why your story resonates with me because I'm an empath, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I was younger, I would feel people's emotions. I didn't know what it was. I absorbed it. I didn't know what it was. I had no clue. I just thought I was a sensitive child. People would call me highly sensitive. If, you tell me something happened to you, I would take it on and get sick and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I started working. My background is training doctors.
Wow.
I went to as far as I could. They loved me. I love them. I had over 300 doctors, but the money was phenomenal, but I was silently dying inside. They gave me cars and all this stuff they threw at me. I wasn't happy. So I said, you know what? So my spirit, God told me, this is what you need to do. I said, I don't want to do this. First of all, I don't like women. I don't want to work with women because they're crazy. And I'm a survivor of sex trafficking, right? So I'm like, nope, don't want to do it. Don't want to work with them. And he's like, you're going to have to do it. So I had left my job, started doing. I said, but what am I going to do? He's like, don't worry about how you're going to get it done. He says, I want you to talk to women. And I'm like, oh my God, oh my goodness. So what I did was I said, well, what do you want me to do? He's like, I want so I was in a store talking and arguing with someone who was from New
Yeah.
York.
Yeah.
And this guy taps me and he says, what do you do? I said, I train doctors. What do you do? I said, I train doctors. He said, I'm asking the wrong questions. What do you want to do? I said, look at me. I belong on radio. I work for a radio station, and the station manager would love your personality because
Wow.
I'm observing you guys, and I'm like, oh my God. So he says, you talk to the station manager, call him. I was so cocky, right? I said, I'm not calling him. If he wants me, he should call me. I don't know what was going on in my head. So he picks up the phone and he calls the guy, and the guy's talking to me. And he's like, okay, today is Thursday. You need to come down on Friday. You need to have a name of a show. You need to have everything. The only thing I'll do is the boards. I didn't know what to, I subscribe to Never Let Them See You Sweat. And I'm like, oh my God, God brought everything. I had viewers because I had a dog going to the dog park. All the people loved me. All my dog people, over 100 people at the dog park tuned into the first show. It was phenomenal. So because of greed, I went back to corporate America because they kept pushing me and getting recruiters to bring me back. So I left. And then when I left, I started to get sick. I
There you
started
go.
passing out. It was just ridiculous. So what you're saying resonates. So finally, my spirit told me if I stayed where I was, the next time I would actually, because I was going through some things, I was going to be coming out in a body bag. So right then and there, so I understand what you're saying because I believe I do the soul connection with people, right? And I said, well, how am I going to talk to women? What am I going to do? He's like, well, you survived this. You're married 30 some odd years.
Wow.
There's a lot
Congrats.
in common. You're African American, and they talk about we never stay married. We're all baby mothers. So there's things that you can talk about. And he said, I'll take care of it. And when I tell you, Kute, he's taking care of it, he has done so much. So I understand when you said that, it resonated in me. And that's why I want people to find out what their purpose is. And because there's so many people hate their jobs, hate what they're doing. And that's why I wanted to ask you this is suffering needed in order to move forward to become a better version of yourselves? Because this whole week, that's all I've been hearing. And then I watched one of your shows. This is all I've been hearing. People are suffering, and talking to me and using the word suffering. So my question to you is, what is your opinion about that?
About suffering. So
Yeah.
is suffering necessary? I would say, well, there is much suffering in the world. But is suffering a necessary ingredient, an element of the human experience? Is it necessary? I would have to say no. That doesn't mean we don't suffer, and people do suffer, but I would say suffering is not a necessary ingredient, because there's many people that have gone through some really, like yourself, I'm sure, some really intense things and have managed to find a way to transcend. Does that mean there is no pain? Let's be clear. Pain is inevitable. Pain is unavoidable. Someone dies is painful. Heartbreak is painful. Every experience that's difficult, challenging can be painful. This is reality. It's part of the experience. But suffering is when we have an experience and we create a story or a meaning about the experience, and we add there's an experience that happens, this happened, and then we add a negative, limiting, judging story on the experience. That resistance, which is our story and our judgment and our limited interpretation, is what creates suffering. And when we are in resistance and judgment and interpreting, let's say, limitedly, we suffer. And so I think pain is a part of life. Suffering is, you could say, a choice we make that is based on our interpretation, our lens, our perspective, and the stories that we tell ourselves about what is happening. There's what's happening, and there's the stories that we tell ourselves about what is happening. And now those stories create suffering. And so I think we have to just realize that it's not necessary. It's a bonus addition based on our consciousness and based on what we choose. The challenge is many of us do suffer. There's a few reasons we suffer. We suffer because we are resisting what is. In terms of, if any moment of suffering, you will usually find a few things. Number one, some thought form where you're saying the experience that I'm having is not the experience I should be having. I should be having some other experience than the experience I'm having right now. Instant suffering, right? Or you're going into the future, creating a negative future fantasy interpretation, meaning story about what's going to happen in the future, which creates suffering. Or you're stuck in the past, wallowing, holding on, resentful about stuff that happened in the past, suffering. Now, I'm not saying that there's not legitimate experiences that are challenging and painful, but we're just looking at what tends to create suffering, or the sense of suffering that can come from like being so disconnected or not connected to some degree to who you really are, but being more identified with ego, more identified with the stories that one tells themselves, or what we've been conditioned to believe that we are by society, by parents. Like, I'm not enough, I'm unworthy, no one's going to love me, I'm unlovable. These stories and belief systems that maybe life, maybe parents, maybe society, maybe caregivers maybe taught us or ingrained in us, the degree to which we hold on to these stories and believe that's who we are, we suffer. And so I don't think it's necessary. I think it's a choice until we start questioning and until we start waking up. The challenge is we're often so identified with our identity, our ego selves, that one of the ways that the ego is our perceived sense of who and what we believe ourselves to be. It's not necessarily a real thing. It's a sense of identification based on past experience, body, name, form, story, experiences. And so ego is the sense of identification. This is who I am. This is who I am. This is who I am. And so ego's job is to reinforce its existence, and ego's job is to protect us from getting hurt again. And so many times it's ego that creates a form of suffering based on its limited interpretation, and it's ego that wants to suffer because also the sense of suffering and hardship and suffering tends to reinforce the sense of ego's existence. I exist because I'm suffering. And so I think we have to just be aware. Now, there are challenging experiences, especially being a human is not easy. I mean, many of us, we've been through some stuff. We've been through some stuff that is like brutal. Some of us, stuff that, look, I work with clients, and when I hear some of the stories, my heart just cracks open to be like, you've been through what? And you're still standing? You've been through what? And you're still smiling? You've been through all of that, and you still are reaching for the light. You're still reaching for possibility and possibility. And so I think for me, just an awareness of, okay, we are souls. We're souls. And we incarnate into this human experience in order to learn, in order to grow, in order to evolve. That this entire human experience is the university for our soul's evolution. Like, life is a university for our soul's growth and evolution. And every experience and every relationship and everything that basically happens is a curriculum for our soul's evolution. Like, we're in university. And so everything and everyone is our teacher. Everything and everyone and every experience is somehow serving our awakening, somehow serving us to realize a deeper dimension of who we truly are. And sometimes, because we're holding on so tightly, because we're so entrenched in ego and control, the only way we tend to let go of ego and control is through intense, painful, difficult experiences. And sometimes it takes the death, the illness, the divorce, the challenge to sort of crack us open, to let go of control, to let go of my will, to say, okay, God, I have done everything I can based on my ego's capacity to manifest my life, and I don't know anymore. I'm in too much pain. I've reached the end of my ego's capacity to make things happen, and I surrender. And I think that is the moment when we begin to also transcend from suffering, still pain, but maybe from suffering into opening to grace. And so we sometimes sometimes it's inevitable based on our conditioned way of being that we will experience painful experiences, because sometimes those painful experiences are pushing us deeper, pushing us to question. And so I don't wish that on anyone, but if life is a school and we are in soul school, university, and if we can start seeing ourselves as souls in everything as an evolutionary process, then every moment of life becomes an opportunity to learn, to grow, and evolve. Even the difficult experience, even that challenging heart relationship, even that difficult situation at work, it's all evolution. Then we don't just look at what is happening, because when we just stay on the one-dimensional level of this happened and that happened and this happened and that happened, good and bad person, then it's easier to sort of create limiting stories and stay in suffering. But when we're able to drop a little deeper and say, I'm a soul, we're all souls evolving, and life is an evolutionary process, then even in a painful experience, a difficult experience, and I'm not saying it's easy, but we open to the possibility of shifting our relationship a little bit to say, okay, it's painful. I have to feel it. I'm mad. I'm angry. I'm sad. I'm hurt. But what is the lesson that my soul is seeking to learn in this experience? Why did my soul manifest this experience? Why did my soul attract this person into my experience? Why did I attract this dynamic into my life? Why did I attract this boss, this job, this situation? And what is my soul seeking to learn? And I think when we can take our lens off of the goal line to the soul line, off of the one dimension to the multi-dimension level of soul, then it doesn't make the situation easy, but at least we can start shifting our relationship to the situation to be able to go through it with less resistance, so that we can learn the lesson where we are. And through learning the lesson where we are, we can begin to navigate and transcend, because I think all lessons are repeated until learned, and we will keep going through painful experiences, which create suffering, painful experiences, until we learn lessons.
See, I'm all about vibrations, and I'm telling you, you're preaching a word right here, right now. Because when you mentioned, for me, and again, in talking to other people, I've noticed when I went through an experience, and that experience taught me about ego, right? Because I was ego driven. When you're working in corporate America, especially, it's rah, rah, rah. You get the rewards, you get the accolades. So then when you come into this space, you have to develop this, right? And I realized I was that fish that was swimming upstream when the water was coming down. And I'm like, what's going on with me? Why do I feel that way? It was ego. And
Yep.
so I've learned to remove the ego. Even if I, let's say, have a disagreement with someone, why am I arguing with them? Is it my ego? Am I not willing to listen? When I tell you that was a 1-2 punch, when I discovered this ego, what it really means, why do I always have to have the last word? Why do I have to? Sometimes it's best to just shut up. Right. and not just be heard, but listen to what other people are saying. Listen to what people are saying. And that's why I created this tagline that's called, we're all in the same book, just different chapters. You are in chapter 30 and I'm in chapter 12. But because my ego is seeing oh my God, he has big seminars. He's a success. I want to rush to 30. No, my job is to go through page 15, 16, 7. Don't read in between the lines. Read all the lines. Graduate to the next chapter, next chapter, next chapter. But I was so ego driven. Yes. And that's when I realized, take a step back. Everything you're going through, Jackie, was an alignment for this. You're going to be going through some more things, because when things happen when it's supposed to happen. It's all in the divine timing. Because I've rushed a lot of things, and boy, forget about burning bridges. I burned villages.
That's honest, Yeah, when we rush things, you might make things happen and force things to happen. But look, if something's not ripe, it won't be ready. And you can pick an avocado from a tree that's not ripe, but it's going to taste like crap. You can pick a mango from a tree that's not ripe, and it's going to be sour. You can eat it. And that's why I say we do have to learn to trust the divine timing of life. But the ego, when we're so locked in ego, our sense of self, or what we believe ourselves to be, then we're not able to see the infinite possibilities. That we're not able to see the whole picture that is seeking to unfold in a moment. When we're locked in ego, we just see life through a very limited prism, a limited lens, because we're like this. So it's like, oh, it's not happening fast enough. It's not happening. And that means this, and this means that. And oh my God, the worst thing is happening. And now we experience suffering because we're making a very limited interpretation from the lens of our ego, which is basically conditioned from our past, pain, trauma, hurt, insecurities from childhood. And now we're like looking at reality, thinking we're seeing reality, but we don't see reality. We just see through the conditioned lens of our ego. And what we have to understand is ego was created in response as a survival mechanism to things that happened to us as children. So we were born. See, as children, we were free. We were in touch with living nature and love and surrendered and open. We were whole, perfect, complete. We were born. We incarnate into this human experience, which can be challenging. And we met our parents. And our parents, God bless their souls, they were doing the best that they knew how to do based on their past and their childhood and their conditioning at that particular moment. That was their generation. That was all they could do based on where they were at. And so maybe dad was crazy. Maybe mom was an alcoholic. Maybe there was abuse. Maybe there was pain. Maybe there was fighting all the time. Maybe our parents were just good people, but they didn't know how to meet our emotional needs. And based on that, it was painful, right? To be disappointed, to be neglected, to be abandoned, to not feel cared for. And that pain was so intense. So as children, two things. The first thing is we learn to shut down, disconnect, and not feel, because it's too painful to feel that mom and dad are screaming and fighting. It's too painful to be abused. It's too painful. So out of survival and self-protection, we shut down, disconnect, not feel, suppress. Layers of unprocessed feeling begin to layer and cover up our true light, and we start erecting walls around ourselves and around our heart in order to like numb ourselves and disconnect from the pain. And now we've created a survival safety mechanism to not feel the pain. Now we've disconnected from ourselves. And then we also learn a way of being to go into the world in order to get love, validation, and approval. Who do I need to be in order to get love, validation, approval? We develop a role, a mask, a persona. We become ego-driven, like, oh, I'm going to show them, and I'm going to be an overachiever, and I'm going to be, I'm going to be the tough guy. I'm going to be the nice girl. I'm going to be the perfect one. I'm going to be the perfectionist, because we think that this is who we need to be in order to get love, validation, approval. We then contort into that shape. We hold so tightly to that way of being, and now that persona, that personality becomes who we think we are, but it's not who we really are. It's just what we've been conditioned to be in order to avoid pain and get love, validation, and approval. And the degree to which we're locked into that is the degree to which we're not free. We think we have free will, but we're just being run by the conditioning of our past, by the conditioning of ego. And so ego isn't bad in and of itself. Let's just be clear so folks can be clear. Everyone has ego. I have ego. You have ego. Dalai Lama has ego. If we went up to Dalai Lama and said, hey, Dalai Lama, how are you? He would turn around and say yes. So if he had no ego, he wouldn't be able to say yes. He would just sit there blank. So ego as a mechanism is neutral. It is the vehicle, the structure and vehicle that you could say consciousness is using to drive and navigate through this life experience. It's just from experiences growing up, some of which were very intense, we learn to sort of hold so tightly and develop all sorts of defense mechanisms in order to protect ourselves. And we made up, I'm going to make sure I never get hurt again. I'm going to make sure I never feel insecure again, or never feel that helpless again, or never feel that stupid again. And the pain that comes from feeling that stupid. So I'm going to know it all. I'm going to be arrogant. I'm going to be pompous. I'm going to, whatever it is, right? And so that egoic way of being becomes a reaction, a defense mechanism from feeling something. And so if we understand that, then we see ego isn't the problem. It's the relationship with ego, our relationship with ego, that's the problem, and based on that, when you can understand, ego is just a functionality, it's neutral, but I'm not the ego isn't a thing. So there's nothing to fight, nothing to get rid of, nothing to like fight against, nothing to annihilate, nothing to kill, because the more we're like, oh, I have to kill the ego, get rid of the ego, the more we actually reinforce its existence, right? And that's what the ego wants. The ego wants to fight. The ego wants resistance, because resistance reinforces its false existence. And so I think when we can realize that, our relationship with ego can shift. We no longer have to fight it, but we can just observe it for what it is, because the way it came about was good intention to keep us safe. And so when we talk about letting go, and see, ego doesn't want to let go. Ego doesn't want to surrender. Ego doesn't want to change. Ego doesn't want to question. Ego doesn't want to be open. It wants to be right, because that gives it a certain sense of certainty. And yes, I exist. Ego wants everything and everyone else to change, but it doesn't want to change, because change and reinvention and consideration and questioning and surrender for the ego feels like a death. The sense of what I am and who I am is going to die. And the degree to which we believe we are ego, the more we tend to resist surrender and resist being open. And so even being ego driven is a protective mechanism to try to keep us safe and reinforce our existence. So when we know that, then we can begin to meet so ego is not a thing, it's a process. Mm-hmm. It's a process of identification. Like a bicycle is a thing, but pedaling is a process. You pedal, there's a process. When you stop pedaling, it doesn't exist. And this is why ego is terrified of being still. Ego is terrified of non-activity. Ego is terrified of meditation. Ego is terrified of silence. Ego is terrified of not doing something. Ego is reinforced in activity. And that's why, for many of us, we are addicted to busyness. Being busy, 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 the business of busyness, because if I'm busy, then I'm here, ego's here, I exist. And so it terrifies us to just, the Bible says, be still and know. Oh, we don't want to be still, because for ego, I might dissolve. And so this is why I think so often we are getting in our own way as human beings. It's ego that is getting in the way in order to try to reinforce its existence, because it feels scary. Like, oh, if I let go, I might get hurt again. If I surrender and trust, bad things might happen, and that can't happen. I might feel helpless again. I might feel insecure again. And so if we understand ego has good intention, we don't have to fight it. We don't even have to force ourselves to let go, but we can start to meet it with loving. And if we can meet this mechanism that is ego with tenderness and kindness and compassion and loving, and hold it gently with understanding, say, thank you. I see you. I know you're not what I am, but I understand this impulse of what you've been, conditioned to do for me. And I think when we can meet it with love and bring compassion to it, slowly ego starts opening and relaxing, and surrender begins to happen.
That's, for me, I can speak for me, where once I acknowledged the ego that I had, it became like 15 pounds of weight was released.
Yes,
And I didn't want to go to therapy because there were some things, and I wanted to choose a particular therapist because I wanted to make sure that there wasn't anyone I could BS, because of my personality, I know I could do it. So I asked the universe, I said, I want to find this particular person. She has to be from New York. She has to be, that's where I was raised. I said, and when I tell you, I called so many because I know I could manipulate it. So I said, no, in order for me to truly heal and help other women, I need to find someone who's going to call me on my BS.
That's clear.
I found her. And then the next step was I didn't realize that I unlocked so many things. I forgot what I've gone through. And then when she started to unlock, then later on, I started to get panic attacks.
Yes.
And then, because now I'm releasing it, and I'm like, but she was so great, because this is one of the few therapists that I've met that was into binaural beats, tapping, and things that, on the Eastern side of the world, that's really good, which I really loved, that she was all about. So she helped me to realize that I had another world inside here that I need to unlock and to help that little child that was damaged, right?
Yes.
So, but the minute I just felt so free, and I realized when I do occasionally go through the panic attacks, because I suffer them rarely, but when I do, it's because I'm rushing.
Yeah.
number one, and I'm being overwhelmed. And I realized, Jackie, that's ego.
Yeah.
You don't have to. So, what I'm learning to do now, to me, the biggest curse word out there is multitasking. That's the biggest curse word for me, right? Because I want to be able to talk to you, not look at my phone. So I'm learning to do
Mm,
one thing at a time. Society has us believe that we need to do 10 things at one time.
mhm,
That's too much on the brain. I don't want
mhm,
to do that anymore. So, I don't care what other curse word you want to call me. I tell people
mhm.
the worst curse word is
Don't say
multitasking.
multitasking.
Right. Don't say it. So for me, because now, people are like, well, you can multitask. So I have to explain, I don't I try
Mm,
not to do that anymore.
mm,
One thing at a time, because I want to be able to give you 100%. I'm looking to give 100%, not 60 or 40. So
mhm,
now things are not, I would write lists down, things that need to be done right away, today.
mhm,
And I learned to realize, Jackie, you can carry over today's task into tomorrow. It's
mm,
okay. So then I
mhm,
started to feel more freer, and that angst that I would feel right here,
mhm,
and because I would feel it bubbling and would be rushed to the hospital because I thought it was, is this a heart attack? What's going on?
mm,
It was
mhm,
anxiety and panic attacks that I was creating. And then I realized what was happening. So now I stay more in the present, not in the
mhm,
future, not in the past, stay in the present. And when I stay in the present, and when I feel myself going that way, I breathe and I'm like, Jackie, focus. You're in the present. Don't worry about next week. Worry about today. And
right.
it's one of the best pills I could
Mhm,
ever take. Plus meditation. I'm working on, and I tell the women in my village, start practicing self-care.
mm,
That's the most important we can do. Mental health, it's because what matters that you have money. Look what happened to Steve Jobs, multi-billionaire, and he died and he didn't get to spend time with his family. His
oh,
children said that.
oh,
So I wake up every morning, and again, I'm telling you, you can call the police off now because I'm the one stalking you. I actually thank the roses. When people are like, oh, it's raining, the grass needs it. So I start my morning with intention of, thank you that I'm allowed to wake up. I'm
yeah.
breathing. I'm drinking a cup of water. I have water that I can take a shower with. The
Mm,
littlest things that it doesn't have to be big. That's what I believe the universe wants from me, that I
mm,
need to make sure that I'm telling it, thank you, the breath in my body. And if I'm running late, it's a reason why I'm running late.
There's a reason.
Maybe I'm not supposed to get into that accident, or
Yep.
maybe. So because before I'm rushing, I'm a type A. I was a type A person, like rushing. Oh my God, I'm late. And then when I get there, the person's not there. So
Right.
I'm so glad that I am so cognizant,
Mm,
and I am unplugged out of the matrix.
yep.
I'm not in the matrix anymore. I'm so-called woke, and I pay attentions to people's body language, their linguistic, their whatever it is. But I'm telling you, the work you're doing, and I know you hear it all the time, it affects me
Mm,
because it has made me a better person, right? And I can go out. My job is just to be a better Jackie today than yesterday. Someone will take heed and do the same thing, because I don't care what anyone says. All the world needs is love. That's all we need. Thank
mhm,
you, Beatles, for saying that. Okay.
mhm,
That's all we really need. And, whether it's the animals, and yes, I'm vegan, but it's not because of cruelty to animals. It's just that I notice when certain things I eat, I absorb it. Whatever it, I've noticed that I've been watching my body with certain
mm,
things.
mm.
So you're just a gem. And I'm glad your mom and dad gave birth to you.
Oh, thank
I'm
you.
glad that you're following your path, because I'm using you as a template in
Mm,
order for my business on
mhm.
just living righteous, if that's a
Amazing.
word that I could use.
Amazing. Thank you. I'm honored. I'm happy to hear, and it's a blessing. You're a blessing.
So let me ask you, I want to ask this question as
Yes.
well. If you could, let's say President Biden sees you on this show and he says, you know what? I loved you on the Women Are Worthy Network. I've found some discretionary funds, $5 million. here, do whatever you need to do with it for your cause or whatever what would you do with that?
What to do with 5 million? It depends, to be honest. I'll be honest. It depends on the day, depends on the moment, depends on the mood, depends, let's see. There's a beautiful cause that I have in Ghana with some orphans. My friend has an orphanage there, 300 kids. I would definitely take some of the funds and support them with that, for sure.
Okay.
That would be one step. I would travel. Why not? I'd travel the world. But I think there's many things that I would do. It would be really an expansion, a continued expansion of what I'm doing.
Okay.
A continued expansion.
And that's what we need. That's what the
Yep,
world
of
is.
what I'm doing, and putting what I'm doing out there even more on different levels. Yeah.
What book, if someone's out here, what 2 books would you recommend that people should be reading now?
Again, that's hard because it's an easy question, but it's a hard question. Just hard because it depends what level, what stage you're at in your development. Not better or worse, just what phase you're at in life, on the path. And so, because there were certain books when I was 13 and 14 that revolutionized my life in that stage. Like when I was 14, I read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and that book was so like outlined, it was structured, and it was like, wow, my mind was blown reading that book at that particular time. As a kid, I would read this guy called Stuart Wilde, and Stuart Wilde was a British metaphysical spiritual teacher who passed away and was so deep. He had a book called Affirmations, a book called Miracles, a book called Whispering Rooms of Change, a book called The Trick to Money is Having Some, one of the best books on abundance and money on the planet. And so at that stage, right, his work was amazing for me. There's a book that I sometimes read. I've read it before, read it many times, sometimes read now, that, to be honest, it's a timeless book because it's a spiritual book. No matter where you are at in your evolutionary process, the book will meet you wherever you're at, because knowledge is kind of structured in consciousness. So as your consciousness expands, the knowledge also meets you wherever you're at. And so this is a book called I Am That by Nisargadatta Maharaj, who's an Indian enlightened mystic and master. And again, that's a profound book. That it's not something you just read in a day. It's something you read a few pages, you digest. You read a few pages, you digest. It's a little non-mainstream and maybe a little more difficult to understand, but it's so deep in terms of just the nature of who we are and the nature of reality. And so that's why I say it's just different stages, different phases of one's life. There's amazing book I read many years ago when I was 21, Conscious Loving, an amazing book called Conscious Loving, that was about relationships, that just so simple, profound, deep, easily written, that revolutionized my understanding of relationship, along with another book that was by Gay Hendricks, another book by Harville Hendricks and his wife, Getting the Love You Want. Amazing books on relationships. So there were different books, at different stages, that really awakened me and helped me in my life. So those are just some that come to mind.
Okay, since we're wrapping this up, my question to you is, what would you like the audience to take away from this conversation that we had?
Wow. I would say couple of things. My invitation, which is why I wrote my book, The Magic of Surrender, because I feel that this is a key to life, to be honest, is the most powerful thing that you can do is to surrender. Surrender yourself. To me, there's lots of stuff out there, but the real secret to manifestation is surrender. The real secret to your next level is surrender. The real secret to big love in life is surrender. If you look at all of the great ones, truly great ones, Jesus, Buddha, Gandhi, and Jesus said, the things I do, you can do these things and more. He didn't just say, it's just me that can do this. So he said, if I did it, you can do it. Jesus, Buddha, Mother Teresa, Gandhi, Mandela, Martin Luther King, Bruce Lee, Muhammad Ali, Bob Marley. I mean, the list goes on. The truly great folks that have moved culture forward, at some point, they all had to surrender themselves. They surrender themselves to life. They surrender themselves to God. They surrender themselves to the universe. They surrender themselves to the divine. They surrender themselves to the soul. They surrender themselves to that deeper calling that was bigger than them. And in surrendering themselves as humans, Gandhi was just a normal man. Mandela, a normal guy. But in surrendering themselves, they transcended their human limitations and tapped into another dimension of life, another dimension of possibilities. And that's when life began to use them, and life began to manifest through them, and life began to, unfold through them, and miracles happen. And so I think when we talk about surrender, it's like there's so many misconceptions we have about surrender today, that if you surrender, you're weak. If you surrender, it's just sitting there doing nothing. If you surrender, it's giving up. It's waving the white flag. That if you surrender, you won't manifest your goals, dreams, and desires. You're going to get taken advantage of. That you're going to get less than. I'm saying no. If you truly surrender from the real sense, what if you got more than you could imagine, more than you could have planned, more than you could have intended for yourself? What if life gave you more? What then? And so we all want magic, but we don't want to surrender. We want to hold on to who we were. We want to hold on to what we were. But the next level of your life requires the next level of you. And the next level of you requires that you let go of who you were, what you thought should be, what you thought was. Surrender is a letting go of control. Surrender is when you stop trying to force life to fit your limited idea of how you think it should be, because just trying to talk about suffering, trying to make something that isn't to be, doesn't make it so, and truly what is truly yours will be yours no matter what happens. You can't screw up, F up God's plan for your life. We're not that powerful. This innate intelligence that is breathing you, breathing me, breathing all existence, breathing the trees, the sun, the star, the moon, it is digesting your food, trillions and trillions and trillions of cells happening in your body and my body. It knows what to do. But you and I, as human beings, from the ego perspective, like, no. I'm in control. Little me is in control of life. We're not in control. Life is in control. And Jesus, to me, was a way show where he talked about, it's not I that does the work, it's the Father that does the work through me. He just got himself out of the way. And I think if we take that example as wow, it's not me, you, Jacqueline, Kute, Susie, John, that does it. It's the universe. It's consciousness. It's this divine intelligence that manifests through us that does the work. So your dreams aren't just your dreams. Oh, I have to do this dream and all this pressure. Your dream chose you. Your dream chose you because you're the perfect person to fulfill that vision and that dream. So our job is to say yes, get ourselves out of the way, show up, make a plan the best we can. Don't get attached to the plan, and get out of the way and let life work. Let life do its intelligence. And I think when we truly surrender, what life can do through us, what life can do through you is way more than you can do on your own. And so to me, surrender is the key. Surrender is when you take the limitations off of life and say, universe, use me. Use me for the highest possibility of humanity. I'm available. I'm open. That's when grace flows. That's when miracles happen.
Well, I'm living it, so I know it's true. I want to thank you, and we hope that we can get you back on, because you are just so phenomenal. And just listening to you is just, for me, it has been an honor for me. This show was for me. And yes, I have to share it with everyone else when I get off, but this was for me. And I want to thank you for obeying the universe, for obeying your purpose, for actually in your mission. I just love what you're doing and how you're doing it, because basically you just want to awaken and inspire people. That's all you really want to do in simplistic forms, yes, from planet across the planet. Yes. That's what you're looking to do, for freedom. You want people to live their authentic lives and fulfill their life purpose. And that's why I want people to wake up. If this is what you want to do, that's fine, but make sure this is what you want to do, not what someone tells you to do. Because again, we all know slavery is not just that. As Bob Marley says, it's mental slavery. So we have to wake up. So we want to thank everyone for tuning in to the Women Are Worthy Network. This has been an awesome conversation that I've had with you. So I want to send you blessings, abundance, We want you to be healthy, you and your family, and continued success. So we want to thank you, and we want to thank everyone for tuning in. And again, y'all, sharing is caring. When you're watching the show, share, share, share. Sharing is caring. And if you want to subscribe, if you want to be part of the tribe, what is it? You must subscribe. Have a good evening, everyone. Bye-bye.